Hi, I'm Rachel Carter and welcome to the Braid Workshop. Open your kit and I'll guide you step by step through all the details. Let's dive into the contents of your kit box. Inside you should find an instructional leaflet with tips, hints and patterns. You should also have your wooden braiding wheel and a little organza bag with bobbins, elastic bands and a hook, and lots of beautiful coloured threads. Now let's set up your bobbins. So inside your pack you'll have a number of these little plastic bobbins, but they're not very heavy and I find it better to have some weight on the bobbin. Now I'm using a washer, but you could use pennies. If you do use a washer, make sure that each washer you choose is identical because you don't want different weights on each of your bobbins. Now the other tip is to use an elastic band. I found that using the threads in your kit box are lovely to braid with, but because they're so silky they can tend to slip out of those little gaps. So I found adding an elastic band to each one helps to prevent that slipping. Organising your threads is an optional extra. I found when trying to undo these threads and work with them, they can get a little bit tangled up. So I've created a colour wheel using little pieces of cardboard. You can wrap the thread around, put a little diagonal slit at the end to hold the end pieces, and use a hole punch to fix it onto a ring. Let's set up your wheel. For this first tutorial we're going to use two contrasting colours. You're going to need 4 lengths of one colour and 3 lengths of another. Now I'm going to go for my first colour of this dark blue. So you need to cut 4 lots of dark blue, or the colour of your choice, at 60 centimetres long. Now as you become more familiar with your braiding kit and you get used to all the different patterns that you make, you can use longer lengths, but for this first tutorial we'll stick at 60 centimetres. Let's have a look for our second colour. I can see the colour wheel is so easy to use, so it takes a little time to set up, but it's worth it in the long run. So for my contrasting colour I'm going to go for this dusky pink. It'll make a great contrast against the navy blue. So we're going to require 3 lengths cut at 60 centimetres long. Let's begin gathering all your threads together. It doesn't matter in which colour order you gather your threads, just try and get all the ends neatly together. We're going to fasten with a simple knot. Now let's set our threads onto our wheel. I find it quite useful to use something that's going to elevate your braiding wheel off your table. I'm using a small bud vase. You could use a jam jar or a tube from Crisps. Anything that will help to elevate your braiding wheel and give you a bit more freedom to organise your threads. To pop the knot through the middle. Now the notch nearest you is 0 and that always stays empty. We're going to take each of the blue threads or colour of your choice and start to fill the spaces. 1 and 2, it's a little bit fiddly, and then slot numbers 3 and 4. Then we take our second contrasting colour and fill slot number 5, 6 and 7. There we go. Now we're going to add the bobbins. We want to make sure that the threads don't move out of their slots, so placing a small book on top of your braiding wheel is really helpful. Let's add the thread onto the bobbin. Tuck the end underneath the elastic band that spans across the centre. Lay it flat, and then we're going to wind on top of it, holding it down. You don't want to work with too long a length when you're braiding, so we're going to leave a short piece and we're going to tuck that end into that slot. Now you'll feel the elastic band pinch the thread, so just make sure that it's secure when you let go. Let's have a look at that again, but from a different angle. So you can see the vase is quite useful and the wheel is sitting on top, held firmly under the book. So as you add each of your bobbins, you don't want them too long. So I'm going to work around my braiding wheel, adding each of the lengths of thread onto a bobbin, securing them in place, and then moving on to the next one. Let's remove the book and then we can make a start. See, all the bobbins are all of a similar length. Let's braid. Hold your braiding wheel so that the empty notch is closest to you. If you prefer a right-handed braid, count 3 to the right. For a left-handed braid, 3 to the left. I'm going to go with the right. Take the third thread, lift it and place it in the empty notch. Rotate the wheel so the empty notch is near you and pick up the third thread and pop it into the empty notch. We're going to continue picking up the third thread and turning for the empty notch to be facing you. Now, whether you're left or right-handed, or prefer to work with your right hand or left hand, you need to make sure that you stick to one pattern because they will come out in a different way. The spiral form that develops with the braid, you will see the two colours almost chasing each other. One will spiral round clockwise and one will spiral round anti-clockwise. So choose the method that suits you and stick to that throughout your braid. Let's lift up the wheel now and hold it in our hand and continue to do our braiding. So remember, you lift up the third thread and place it in the notch. Then you rotate the wheel towards you. You can see the little braid is starting to form in the centre. So my bobbins are getting quite short. So let's have a look at how to extend your threads. So just pick each one up, give it a couple of turns and make sure that it feels like it's stuck down the side of the elastic band so it's not going to unravel once you start braiding again. Work your way around each bobbin, extending the length just by a small amount. It can be very tempting to leave long lengths, but I've found that they'll easily get tangled up and then it takes a long time to unravel your tangle. So it's much better to work with shorter lengths and repeatedly extend than it is to get a big tangle. Nearly there. and then we can continue again. There's something I really like about this slow rhythmic process of creating braids, just slowly lifting your threads, turning your wheel. I find it very relaxing. You can see as I'm working around the wheel that the little bobbins at the end of each thread are just the right length, and they're moving with ease, but they're not too long that they get tangled. Now we've got a little length, we're going to introduce the next step. As your braid starts to form in the centre of your braiding wheel, then adding another weight helps to get a really beautiful finish. Pop some weight in your organza bag and take the two ends and place it onto your brass hook so that it sits in the little section of the hook. Then we're going to thread the long end through the end of the braid. Slot it through until it's suspended from the end of your braid. Now it's a little bit tricky, so I've just released the braid, trapped it under between the vase and the braiding wheel, and I'm going to place my hook through the end. You don't want to go too heavy on your weight, but experiment with different weights and see which one feels comfortable for you. You should have just a slight pulling of your threads in the centre. Adding weights both on your bobbins and on the braid that's coming out the centre is a good way to get a really successful braid. Here's a few handy tips. Now when you come to extend your bobbin, sometimes they can move about. So a little tip is to place a heavy weight on top, like a book. Then you can wind the extra thread without worrying about it moving. My next tip is to try and return to the original pattern when you place your braiding wheel down. Now for this tutorial we started out with 4 colours in 1, 2, 3 and 4, and 3 of a contrasting colour in spaces 5, 6, 7. Now as you're working your braiding wheel, you'll see that the pattern always returns back to the original. So before you stop to have a break, make sure that the original pattern is showing on your braiding wheel, and then you'll know that when you place it down, it's ready to go and you know what it should look like when you pick it up. Once you've got to the desired length of your braid, we're going to finish off. Now the first thing to do is to remove your central weight. So let's just take the hook out and put it to one side. Then we can rest the braid wheel on top of your vase, and then we can start to unwind any thread that's left over on your bobbins. Lift the braid wheel slightly so you can get your left hand under and pinch the top of the braid and remove the wheel. I'm going to show you a nice way of finishing off. Take a piece of thread in a contrasting colour and lay a little of it to the left. Make a large loop and then hold that firmly in your right hand. Take the longer length and wind it around a few times. Then swap your hands, and you're going to take the long length and place it through the loop. Return to the short length on the left and pull it. Watch the loop shorten as you pull it through and underneath the binding. And to give the right side a little pull too, and then pull both together. And it makes this lovely neat binding at the end. Now that you've had a go, why don't you try some of the new patterns using different contrasting colours and different setups to make a variety of braids. If you're watching this as part of the Standing in This Place project, then do select your favourite piece of braid and pop it in the prepaid envelope and get it back to me. It would be fantastic to use a piece of your braid in the new sculpture. Thank you for watching, and do check out some of the other tutorials in the workshop section of my website.